any change in this country if we stand together and fight for what's right. And we need a pathway to citizenship.
Yo siempre he dicho que ahora ya que estamos al último, ojalá las vidas de los niños que están chiquitos, que tienen padres sin documentos, va a cambiar.
The Build Back Better bill is passed.
Last year in 2021, the movement was one vote short of winning a historic progressive bill that would have included immigration reform with a pathway to citizenship for millions of immigrant essential workers, DACA recipients, temporary protected status holders, and their families.
West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin dealing a devastating blow.
This is a no.
Sadly, we missed that opportunity by one Senate vote. Disappointed but never defeated, we charted a course forward, pivoting to building pressure on President Biden to use executive action to deliver federal protections for immigrant families, organizing and growing our voting base for the 2021 and 2022 elections, supporting new immigrant champions, and building year-round power in schools, workplaces, and community. As the midterm November 8th elections are weeks away, all eyes are on Wisconsin, a pivotal swing state.
Wisconsin, it's considered one of the fiercest battlegrounds in the country.
The stakes are high. The balance of power can either tip in the direction of the far right in the upcoming elections or advance our momentum to have a majority of progressives in the U.S. Congress who will vote for immigration reform, social justice, and a working-class agenda.
When we build an immigration system that values justice and treats all people with the dignity that they deserve, we ensure a better life for everyone.
Wisconsin is in a position to deliver the progressive vote to the U.S. Senate by ousting Senator Ron Johnson, who has continuously failed Wisconsin families. This year, Voces de la Frontera Action members are organizing to elect Mandela Barnes to secure the additional vote needed in the U.S. Senate to pass a bill that grants permanent protections for immigrant workers and their families. At the state level, Trump-backed candidate for governor Tim Michels is running on an anti-immigrant platform. If elected, Michels would work with the Republican gerrymandered majority in the state legislature to introduce policies that would target immigrant communities, attack social programs, and put our state on a pathway to far-right extremism. Governor Evers, elected in 2018 with the help of Voces' efforts on the ground through relational organizing, has proven to be a critical line of defense with the power to veto dangerous legislation, including anti-immigrant legislation and voter suppression laws. If passed, these laws would undermine any pretense of democracy. Governor Evers has been a champion for immigrants and introduced driver's licenses and in-state tuition into his two state budgets, only to have Republicans vote them out. Voces de la Frontera and Voces de la Frontera Action members, with our allies, have been standing firm against efforts by the far right to resume or hold power. We are fighting back against these attacks with the best tool we have: organizing. Fighting back means speaking truth to power, even when we are not yet in a position to achieve the changes we want. At the end of 2021, Voces de la Frontera joined our allies, including Bloc, LULAC, NAACP, the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign, HAWA, UMOS, Souls to the Polls, SEIU, and Wisconsin Voices, to challenge unfair maps to ensure voters of color and the growing Latinx community can elect representatives of our choice at the federal, state, and city level.
To work with the Hispanic community to create a fair map that provides fair representation and that acknowledges the contributions our communities make into the city.
However, in February, these unfair maps were upheld at the state and city level. Despite this loss, we continue to call out and resist similar efforts to undermine the will of the voters.
Let us stay! Let us stay!
In recognition of Voces de la Frontera Action's capacity to turn out Latinx and multiracial youth voters that were critical in defeating Trump in Wisconsin.
Voces de la Frontera Action contacted more than 100,000 Latinx voters.
We became the target of Republicans in a sham 2020 election review headed up by Voss and Gableman. This modern-day witch hunt also targeted the mayors of Madison, Green Bay, the Election Commission, and then demanded from us a mountain of information related to the past and future elections. This was an unlawful attempt to spread lies, undermine the will of the voters, and create a false narrative to justify voter suppression.
To try to attack an organization that has effectively organized statewide Latinx turnout in elections that matter.
In partnership with Law Forward, Voces de la Frontera Action challenged and prevailed, forcing Gableman to drop his bogus subpoenas. Ultimately, Gable's witch hunt would end, showing no evidence of fraud in the 2020 elections and costing taxpayers over $1 million. In spring, we demonstrated our electoral power once again in the spring elections by reactivating our Vocero relational network of thousands of voters, our friends, family, neighbors, and co-workers. Voceros held a Freedom to Vote community celebration, knocked on over 58,000 doors canvassing, and made over 12,000 phone calls to encourage eligible voters to go and
Primera vez
vote.
voy a votar porque soy apenas me hice ciudadana.
I just became a naturalized U.S. citizen.
Y hasta que un día dije, yo quiero el voto para mí, derecho de voto.
So one day I said, I want the right to vote for myself.
Estoy aquí y sí se puede, y me siento bien.
And I am here, and yes, we can, and I feel good.
Our efforts in the spring elections brought a historic victory for Milwaukee's first black mayor, Cavalier Johnson, and grassroots progressive champions like Anthony Gray, Joe Maldonado, Tom Rutkowski, Eric Hopkins, and Juan Miguel Martinez.
Contend that this is rather inhumane because it requires migrants to wait in some of these Mexican border towns, which are some of the most dangerous in the world.
We also saw progress at the federal level when movement pressure forced President Biden to take steps to roll back the Trump-era Remain in Mexico and Title 42 policies, which are a violation of human rights laws and are blocking and endangering asylum seekers at our border. However, Republican-led battles have prevented Biden from moving forward in restoring a working asylum system.
Tomaron las principales calles de Milwaukee. Eran miles de inmigrantes latinos que hoy decidieron no ir a trabajar y dejar de consumir. Un mensaje para que el gobierno valore lo importante que son para la economía. Con estos anuncios, los negocios latinos en todo Wisconsin cerraron sus puertas.
La causa es primero.
May Day, a national day of action for our National Immigrant Rights Network firm, was a day to pivot our demands on President Biden to use executive action to continue to push to end Title 42, discriminatory policies against asylum seekers, expand temporary protected status, abolish the racist 287G program, and abolish for-profit detention centers. Understanding the economic collective power workers hold, and after the statewide spring elections, Voces de la Frontera members voted to organize a 2-day strike on May 1st and May 2nd. More than 140 business owners closed in solidarity and in support of immigrants, and were joined by members of the Wisconsin Farmers Union and other key community allies.
Porque no somos uno, no somos 100, somos millones. La palabra es lo que más cuenta en la vida. Y nos prometió algo.
May 1, we organized a mass march and strike of over 40,000 people in Milwaukee.
Promesa. And I want to thank each and every one of you. Our movement is stronger than ever, and the majority of people in this country are on our side.
On May 2nd, we traveled to the Wisconsin State Capitol, where students led a 200-strong walkout to join a mobilization and 100-person statewide lobby day to call out Wisconsin far-right Republicans for blocking access to driver's licenses and in-state tuition equality. Youth Empowered in the Struggle is Voces' youth arm that mobilizes immigrant, multiracial youth, working-class students to improve their schools and communities. In spring, YES launched the School Lunch Justice campaign to improve the quality of school lunches within the Milwaukee Public School District.
School lunch justice. School lunch justice.
June was Immigrant Heritage Month, and we also welcomed summer and its festivities, including Pride and Juneteenth, two monumental celebrations of resistance. The Essential Worker Rights Network provided trainings on workers' rights and empowered workers to collectively address workplace concerns and build community support. Supporting workers in recovering lost wages in early June, and standing in solidarity with workers at Medline Industries, one of the nation's largest private healthcare companies, where workers were unjustly terminated.
Spanish. Mi cuerpo, mi decisión, which means my body,
the
my
U.S. Supreme
choice. You
Court
ready?
overturned Roe v. Wade, a decision that sent shockwaves rippling across the country. Voces de la Frontera champions reproductive justice and the right to access a safe and legal abortion. We joined our allies and elected officials to support the reproductive justice movement.
Mi nombre es Eduardo Perea, soy de Wisconsin. El presidente Biden tiene el poder y la obligación de terminar la 287G ahora.
Voces de la Frontera and Never Again Action collaborated in a powerful National Day of Action on July 25th in Washington, D.C. to send the message End 287G to the doorstep of Secretary of Department of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas' home. During his presidential campaign, President Biden promised to undo the racist policies ramped up under Trump that terrorize immigrants every day, including to end 287G contracts. But it's been 2 years of inaction. The discredited 287G program actually undermines safety by promoting fear in immigrant communities, legalizing racial profiling, and has a devastating social and economic impact on communities as more families experience deportations and the breakup of families. It's clear that President Biden must take immediate action to reverse course and end 287G, and that's going to depend on organizations like Voces to hold this administration accountable to make that happen. This year marks 10 years since immigrant youth won the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, known as DACA.
Yet these young people are once again stuck in the middle of a political fight over how to reform the country's immigration laws.
DACA recipients have established roots in the U.S. and give back to their local communities. We honor our DACA recipient, Voces members and staff, and we are committed to serving the documented community with assistance, with legal advice, as well as our DACA Scholarship Fund. But DACA's future is not secure, nor is it permanent, and our youth need a permanent pathway to citizenship.
El poder latino es fuertísimo.
The power of Latinos is strong.
Knowing the importance of defeating far-right candidates in November and holding those we elect accountable to deliver on their promises, a delegation of 70 Voces de la Frontera Action members marched in Milwaukee's Labor Fest parade to welcome President Biden. We issued our demands for executive action while announcing our endorsements for the November elections and calling for Latino and multiracial voters to participate in full force and join our efforts.
Estamos a tiempo. Este es el momento.
As Latinos, it is critical that we continue to grow the numbers of naturalized U.S. citizens to be able to vote.
Y nuestra voz es nuestro voto y hay que seguir luchando.
Voces' New Americans program is helping permanent residents become naturalized citizens. The program helps permanent residents navigate the requirements of becoming a U.S. citizen through free civics classes, English assistance, and legal assessments.
Mi nombre es Miriam, igual que yo estoy muy motivada estudiando para obtener mi ciudadanía.
To date, more than 100 students are enrolled in our classes, and many students have or are on a path to graduate.
I vote. Yo voto.
I vote.
Yo voto.
I vote.
Yo voto.
Sí se puede con el voto.
We know that our efforts to turn out Latino multiracial youth, first-time and infrequent voters for November 8th, will determine the election outcome and chart the fight ahead of us. Now, throughout the November 8th and beyond, Voces de la Frontera and Voces de la Frontera Action will continue to organize for the dignity and justice for immigrant and working class communities. We know it's going to take a lot of work, but with your support, we will win federal immigration reform. We will win driver's licenses. We will win in-state tuition, and we will defeat far-right extremism. The power is in our hands. Sí se puede.